The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the dense forest. The trees stood tall and silent, their thick branches intertwined like skeletal fingers, shrouding the forest in darkness. A cool breeze whispered through the pines, carrying with it the scent of earth and pine needles, but there was something else in the air tonight, a presence, dark and malevolent. Angela stood on the edge of the forest, her striking blue eyes reflecting the last glimmers of daylight. She was beautiful, with long auburn hair that cascaded down her back in soft waves and a face that could disarm even the wariest of men. But beneath that angelic exterior lay a heart of ice, a soul twisted by darkness. She had been coming to these woods for years, perfecting her craft, leaving no trace of her victims behind. She moved with grace, her steps barely making a sound on the forest floor. The pines seemed to part for her, as if the forest itself knew her and feared her. Tonight, she was hunting. Deep in the forest, a group of hikers was setting up camp. There were 3 of them, Mark, Lisa, and Jason, old friends who had reunited for a weekend getaway. They were laughing, unaware of the eyes watching them from the shadows. Angela observed them for a moment, her gaze lingering on Lisa. The woman's laughter was carefree, her face glowing in the light of the campfire. Angela felt a pang of envy, followed by a cold, calculated determination. As the night wore on, the hikers settled into their tents, the fire dying down to embers. Angela waited until the only sounds were the rustling of leaves and the occasional hoot of an owl. Then, she moved. Her movements were fluid, almost ethereal, as she approached the camp. She knew these woods better than anyone, every hidden path, every whispering tree. She reached Lisa's tent first. The zipper was old, and it gave way with little resistance. Inside, Lisa slept soundly, unaware of the danger that loomed over her. Angela stared down at her, a mix of emotions churning within her, jealousy, hatred, a twisted sense of righteousness. She knelt down, her hand hovering over Lisa's throat. A small blade glinted in the moonlight. Lisa's eyes snapped open just as the blade pressed against her skin. There was no time for her to scream, no time to comprehend the terror that had befallen her. Angela's movements were swift, precise. A gurgle escaped Lisa's throat as her life ebbed away, her eyes wide with shock and fear. Angela withdrew the blade, wiping it clean on Lisa's sleeping bag. She stood up, her expression emotionless, as if what she had just done was as natural as breathing. The forest was silent, as if mourning the loss of another soul to its dark depths. She moved to the next tent, where Mark and Jason slept. They would be easier, she knew. Men were always easier. A quick slash, a final breath, and they too would be gone, absorbed into the shadows of the forest. But as she approached, a sound stopped her in her tracks, the snap of a twig behind her. Angela spun around, her blade at the ready, but there was nothing. The forest was empty, the trees standing still, but she knew she was not alone. Someone, or something, was watching her. She could feel its eyes on her, cold and unforgiving. A low growl rumbled through the trees, and for the first time, Angela felt a twinge of fear. She had never been afraid of the forest before, it had always been her ally, her hunting ground. But now, she felt its anger, its rejection. The pines seemed to close in around her, the shadows growing darker, thicker. The growl grew louder, closer. Angela backed away, her heart pounding in her chest. She turned and ran, her footsteps echoing through the silent woods. The trees reached out for her, their branches clawing at her clothes, her skin. The forest was alive with anger, with vengeance. She ran blindly, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The growl was right behind her now, almost at her heels. She stumbled, her foot catching on a root, and she fell to the ground. She scrambled to her feet, but it was too late. The darkness closed in around her, swallowing her whole. The forest was silent once more, the growl gone, the shadows still. The camp was untouched, the fire now just a pile of ashes. The only sign that anything had happened was the trail of blood leading away into the trees, where the forest had claimed another soul. And somewhere, deep within the woods, the pines whispered a name that would be forgotten by morning, lost to the darkness of the forest. Angela, the huntress, had become the hunted, her life taken by the very wood she had once called home.